with all this push that they're doing and redefining, you had the Federal Reserve coming out just yesterday, increasing interest rates again to combat the Biden inflation. So the Federal Reserve announced on Wednesday that it raised interest rates by 75 basis points for the second straight month in an effort to help slow inflation. I personally don't think it's enough. Again, if you look back throughout history, you doing 0.75% here, 0.25% here, you need to ultimately do a little bit more than that, give it way more of a bump to show everybody, hey, I'm a little bit serious on this, on trying to curb inflation. Quote, the committee seeks to achieve maximum employment and inflation at the rate of 2% over the long run, the Fed said in a press release. In support of these goals, the committee decided to raise the target range for the federal funds rate to 2.5 and a little bit lower than that as well, percent, and anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range will be appropriate. I think it's 2.25 to 2.5 is really what the range that they're looking for. The Federal Reserve also noted that recent indicators of spending and production have softened, but added job gains have been robust in recent months and the unemployment rate has remained low. So they keep pushing this idea of job gains and unemployment remains low. But like I said, we just came out of just shutting everything down. So when everything opens back up, what do you expect to happen? Like, honest to God, like, what do they expect to happen? Like, people not to go back to work? I mean, it did happen for a little bit because you're cranking out checks and basically out competing the private sector and the corporate world. But once those unemployment checks stopped coming, all of a sudden people went back to work. Go figure, right? So I don't understand why they keep pushing this. Well, look at the job numbers. Look at the unemployment. Yes, you opened everything back up, but that does not mean that you still can't have negative GDP growth and still be in a recession. Well, not everything's receding, so obviously we're not in a recession. God. And people buy into this crap. That's the thing. Look, if this was Trump or anybody else, like when we get a Republican back in office, trust me, the Walt Brad show will still be here. I don't care who the hell you are. You're a politician. If you're somebody running and living in the government and you're telling me what I can and can't do, you're going to get a shellacking regardless. I love Trump, but there's going to be some things I will say about him that maybe not everybody will jive with, maybe not everybody will agree with that's on the Trump side of the aisle. I will vote for him. I'm a registered Republican. At heart, I'm a conservative. I love Trump. I love DeSantis, but look, they're politicians, folks. Okay? We're the people. We're the American people. They're supposed to serve us and run the country efficiently. When you got politicians like the nut jobs in the government right now, they're going to take a shellacking from all us Americans, at least on the right-hand side of the aisle, because Democrats are just covering for them. It also claimed that Russia's war in Ukraine is partly to blame for the ongoing economic woes. That is true. I love how they only say partly to blame, but I'm curious if the Fed's going to blame the Biden administration. For those that are listening, I just shook my head. That ain't going to happen. Inflation remains elevated, reflecting supply and demand imbalances related to the pandemic, higher food and energy prices, and broader price pressures. Russia's war against Ukraine is causing tremendous human and economic hardship. The war and related events are creating additional upward pressure on inflation and are weighing on global economic activity. The committee is highly attentive to inflation risks. While the Fed may say that the Russian war is to blame, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has previously testified that inflation was high before, certainly before the war in Ukraine broke out. That sounds like a little bit of a contradiction to what Karine Jean-Pierre just said, where basically Biden's whole plan and his policies had no effect on inflation. It wasn't his fault, all that cash he was throwing in the economy. That didn't cause inflation. Never happened. What are you talking about? No, see, he helped everything. He boosted the economy. You see this whole spiel with what Obama did, cashing out, bailing out the banks and others. You have the same thing here with Biden throwing out these freaking COVID checks like they're hotcakes, even though not everybody needed them. It was super inefficient, basically dumb, because there's a lot of people that still had their job. There's a lot of people that were still making a good amount of income that didn't need those checks or were able to pay their bills. So we didn't need to spend nearly the amount that we needed to, or you could just open up the economy as well and kind of save us all from this. But no, he didn't want to do that. He would rather just pump out checks and put in all this crazy crap from the Democrat Party that was called pork into these bills and all this stuff so everybody can get their way. Just completely nutso. A lot of it was the climate crisis stuff that they're pushing. The move comes as the Consumer Price Index report in July that inflation increased 9.1% between June of 2021 and June of 2022. In June, the Fed also hiked interest rates by 0.75%. In other words, 0.75%. That was the boldest action since 1994 after inflation rose 8.6% in May. So they're going to continue this whole charade that none of this is really happening. They'll say that inflation's happening, but they're going to blame it on Putin. They'll not admit that recession is happening, and they're just going to say that we're in a slow transition of growth. It's just mind-blowing. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.